What's up, guys? My name's Rick. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey,
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? All right. Yeah, my sobriety date is November 29th of 2005, and I have a home group. My home group is the Stepping Stones. We meet in Northeast Philadelphia. It's an inner city clubhouse, and it's we used to have 24 meetings a week. Now we're down to 17 meetings a week because of COVID, and we are live, and we do practice social distancing, and we wear masks and all that stuff. And I love my home group. When I first got there 15 years ago, you can get anything you wanted to get. You can get methadone. You can get leather jackets. You can buy boots. You can place bets. You could play pinochle. But there's one thing that you couldn't get, and that was a big book. And and what happened over the last 15 years is that's because of my second sponsor. It all flipped over to where it flipped over into a pocket of enthusiasm where if you want to sponsor and you want to get well, there's many men and women there who can help us do that. And my sobriety date is November 29th of 2005, but my first meeting there was in 1999. And that's 6 years of bouncing in and out of the fellowship, struggling. And it wasn't by a lack of trying. I know what it's like to sit in the rooms of AA and trying to stop drinking, and you can't pull it off. I know what it's like to sit in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at 13 months sober, knowing I want to drink again. And you can't open up to anybody. And there's a wall of pride that goes up that you can't disclose yourself to anybody, because if you know about me, what I know about me, then you're going to feel about me the way that I feel about me. And I can never ask for help. And I perfected that art form. Like, how do you ask for help and not look like you need it? I perfected that, and it nearly killed me. And excuse me, I picked up a drink at 14 years old. And the best way to describe my drinking, it's pretty funny how we tell drinking, we talk about our drinking to a bunch of drunks. It's like, it's just so funny. Like, I drank, and it was like I went away to senior week at 17 and came back at 42. Like, that's the best way to describe my drinking. Everything was a party. And I drank for about 26 years with relatively no consequences. And then I started to get some consequences, and I saw that drinking was a problem, and I wanted to stop, and I found that I couldn't. And I went into my first treatment center in 1999, and I came out of that treatment center with, like our book talks about, unusual confidence, and I thought I'd never drink again because I had a desire to not drink. And I made meetings, and I went to a lot of meetings, but I could not connect. I could not connect or trust anybody, because if for a guy like me, if you have all the answers already, or you think you know what you suffer from, I'm not going to ask for help. And those 6 years that I bounced in and out were probably the worst 6 years of my life. And I would relapse, and I would try to jumpstart a party that was never there. I would be in AA, and I would leave an AA meeting, and I would go to the bar, and I would drink. And at one time, drinking lit me up and allowed me to come out and play and fit in and be part of. But then I would go to the bar after being in AA, and alcohol didn't work no more. And I would drink, and there would be self-pity. I would drink, and there would be self-loathing. I would drink, and there'd still be resentment. I would drink, and there'd still be fear. And when alcohol stops working, it's a dark, dark, lonely spot. I picked up a drink at 14 years old. And I was down the shore with my family. And my 19-year-old cousin, she said to me, "Rick, you're drinking tonight." And I never really seen anybody drink. I know my parents had beer in the house, but I never seen my dad crack open a beer. It was for the neighbors, and it was for company and the relatives that came over. And I'm down the shore of this is so hard. This is so hard. I was down the shore of My family, my 19-year-old cousin said, Rick, we're going to drink tonight because if you drink, you can't rat us out. And like I said, I never seen anybody drink. I never seen anybody in my family really get drunk, sloppy drunk, or anything like that. And I drank a quart of Budweiser. I don't think I finished it. I drank most of it, but I don't think I finished it. And I went up on that boardwalk, and I was different. You know, there was a lot of my childhood memories are from down the shore, and we would spend a lot of the summers down in Wildwood. And my mom would wake up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and she would go down to the beach, and she would stake out like an acre of ground, and that's where our whole families would stay. That's where we were at for the whole day. From sun up to sundown, we'd be on the beach. And there was this wooden roller coaster. I think it was a Maury's Pier in Wildwood that I was afraid to go on. Every day about 3 o'clock, I'd walk back to the house and get on my bike and drive up to the boardwalk. And I would just stare at this roller coaster. And with all my might, I would stand in line. I'd lock my bike up and stand in line. And when I get close to getting on the roller coaster, I would chicken out. And that night that I drank the quart of Budweiser, I went on that roller coaster twice. That's what booze does for me. It takes me from Stephen Urkel to James Bond and 4 Budweisers. It's powerful stuff. And it's my nerd remover. It's my awkwardness remover. I swear to God, I had no ability to talk to people before. Prior to that, I had no really ability to connect with anybody. I was 14 years sober. From the time my mom gave birth to me till I picked up a drink, I was 14 years. Never had a drink or a drug. And I'll tell you what, I needed to have that drink. And I truly believe that alcohol kept me alive long enough to get to you guys. Because without it, everything pales in comparison. Everything I did was saturated in booze. At 17 years old, I got a job at my uncle's beer distributor. And at 19 years old, I was working at the beer distributor and I was bartending at night. Everything I did was saturated in booze. I just loved the nightlife. I loved everything about the bar scene and the drinking and all that came with that. I was addicted to that lifestyle. And booze was a part of it. And I didn't know I was making a decision at 14 years old. I did not know that I was making a decision at 14 years old that would cut me in the ribbons. And so hard to connect on this, man. I'm sorry, guys. Me and Zoom just don't get along, man. Oh, this is so hard. So I drank. Like I said, I drank until I couldn't drink. I drank until drinking no longer worked. And I tried to jumpstart something that never started. And it was, let me just backtrack for a second. You know, I had a job. I had a job in the city of Philadelphia. I got that job in the mid 80s. And people have talked to me about my drinking a lot. And I had this job, and all they had to do, the administrators of the courthouse at City Hall in Philly came to me and they said, Rick, you know, you have a problem with drinking. And I drank with most of them guys. And all I had to do was admit I had a problem, and I couldn't admit it. So step one for me was really tough because there's no way that I'm not ever going to be able to drink again. I remember getting 12-step by my sponsor, and I'm like, there's no way I'm not drinking at my wedding. And he'd be like, do you have a girlfriend? He's like, no. And he's like, what are you worried about it for that? And I could never picture life without booze. But I'll tell you what, God's grace got me to my sobriety date. And this is where my experience differs from a lot of people's experience, where I don't think that God's grace keeps me sober. I think God's grace got me here because grace is an unmerited gift. The unmerited gift was I got here. I got here alive. And that grace will only carry me up until I see truth in that first step. And then once I see the truth and I fail to take any action on that, There's no more grace left. I think everybody in this world is in God's grace. Whoever's taking breath is in grace. And I think there's a big difference for me, because if things don't make sense here for me, I'm not going to stay here very long. Like I heard things in my first few meetings in 1999 to 2005 that didn't make sense to me. If things don't make sense to me, I won't. And because people that have told me things like don't drink and let it go, and meeting makers make it, stuff like that, which is all good stuff. But none of that stuff made sense to me. When people said to me, don't drink, you don't want it bad enough. That didn't make sense to me, because I've been in 13 treatment centers in 6 years, and I wanted to be sober. Once I had a taste of sobriety, I really wanted to be sober, but I didn't know nothing about losing power, choice, or control. And I wanted to stay sober, but I know that my desire to be sober will never be enough to keep me sober. And I learned the hard way. If I learned easy, I wouldn't need to learn hard. And I'll tell you what my life looked like on my last drink. November 28th of 2005, I found myself panhandled in Northeast Philadelphia. And when I panhandle, I don't ask for change, I ask for fives. So panhandling wasn't going too good for me, because there's a lot of work being out there. It was snowing out, and I was cold. And I remember I was making my sales approach to this young girl, and she had another young girl with her. I guess she was about, I don't know, I guess it was mom and daughter, or it might have been sister and sister, I don't know. But she seen me coming, and she grabbed that little girl by the ears and threw her in the back seat of the car. And as she locked the doors, she didn't have automatic locks. She locked the doors. It was, each time she locked the door, it just got so loud. And as she drove by me, I caught my reflection in her back window. And even though it was snowing out, there was still a little bit of light. And it was just enough to see what I looked like. And I didn't. It just cut me right in the gut. And now, and my plan was, I had 50 cents in my hand. I was going to make a phone call. And if my buddy Vic didn't answer the phone, I was just going to throw myself in front of the next bus or a truck that came down the boulevard. And I made a phone call. With my buddy Vic, and he answered the phone. I never expected him to answer, because he never really answered the phone back then. And he said, if you want help, you get to my house. And it was about a 7.5 mile walk to his house from where I was at. And I said, I can't do it. I said, I can't get there. So I started walking. It took me a long time to get there. And I knocked on his door. He took one look at me. And he said, Rick, you can't leave here looking like that. Because what I looked like was I had gotten locked up. First I had a failed suicide attempt, and I hung myself at 13 months sober. And that's what untreated alcoholism looks like in my life. I was 13 months sober with no drinking, no drugging, no medication, no nothing. And I hung myself in this house that I'm in right now upstairs. My parents were down here. I let myself in upstairs. And at 13 months sober, I tied the Timberland shoelaces from my boots around my neck, and I hung myself in the shower tracking. And I remember myself swinging back and forth in the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. And what happened was just the knot came untied, and I fell about 5 or 6 feet onto the porcelain tub and the tracking of the shower doors. And I rolled back into the bathtub. I laid there for about 6 hours till my mom found me 6 hours later, getting ready to bleed out. And I busted my eye sockets, and I still have the scars on my face and my nose and my neck to remind me when I shave and wash my face every day that what untreated alcoholism looks like. So that happened. That happened, and I went from there. I got 302 to Friends Hospital. I got out of Friends Hospital, and I drank, and then I got locked up. So I came out. I got locked up in a tuxedo. So how I showed up at my buddy's door was I was in a tuxedo with both knees had holes in both knees. I had the white tuxedo shirt, with the black handprints that went across here and blood soaked in here. And I showed up to my buddy's house. I didn't shave or bathe in probably a month. And my buddy said, you can't live here looking like this. And what he did was he walked around to another house that he was fixing up. He said, you can stay here if you want. But you can't drink, you can't do drugs, and you have to go back to AA. And I said, I'm gonna do my best not to drink and drug, but I'm not going back to AA because AA don't work. And he said, well, if you want to stay in this house, you got to go back to AA. And he left. And then what happened next is why I'm still here. What happened next changed my life, whether I drink again or not. In came, my buddy Vic left the house, and then walked a guy with 2 big books. This kid named Danny came in with 2 big books. And if you're like me, that's not what you want to see with 0 days sober. And he took one look at me, and he said, Rick, I'm here if you want help. And I said, if you have a lawyer that would represent me for free, that would be help. And if you had money to lend me, that would be help. And a change of clothes would be nice. And you know, if your girlfriend had a friend that would date me, that would be nice too. So I already had all these ideas of what my life should look like and what I thought I needed for help. It's amazing how every time I've been in 13 treatment centers. It's amazing how every time I ask for help or I get 12 stepped off the avenue, I get placed in some facility and I come to and there's a 12 steps on the wall, but I can't connect the dots. So now I'm in this house and there's a guy trying to 12 step me and I still can't connect the dots. And he handed me a book and I put the book down. There was no furniture in this house. He gave me a book. I put it on the floor and I slid it across the floor. I said, I don't want to read that book. I said, I'm not going back to AA, don't work. And then he said something. It was really the first piece of truth that I ever got in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, Rick, when you relapsed at 13 months sober, were you hearing fist steps? I said, no. He said, did you have a prayer and meditative life? I said, no. He said, were you doing the 10-step? You didn't have a sponsor, so no, you weren't doing the 10-step. I said, no. He said, did you make any amends? I said, no. He said, did you have a home group? I said, no. He said, were you in service to a home group? I said, no. He said, there's 5 or 6 things that AA asked you to do that you never did. So don't ever say AA don't work. So when you get locked up or you're in some jail cell or you're in some detox again for the 14th time, don't ever utter the words that AA don't work because you never did AA, so you'll never know if it worked or not. And that was the first piece of truth I got. And then he asked me a question. He said, Rick, do you think drinking's your problem? He said, do you think drinking's your problem or do you think sobriety's your problem? I said, Dan, I had 13 months sober. I tried to kill myself 13 months sober. I picked up a drink and my life's total crap. I said, drinking's my problem. And he gave me this look. And then he walked away from me. And I think he got what every good sponsor wants. He got me to chase him at the door. And I said, what was that, the wrong answer? You got to remember, I'm 0 days sober. I had drank that morning. And he said, think about it for a second, Rick. If you were 13 months sober, I said, yeah, I was. He said, you ain't touched a drink in 13 months. How can drinking be your problem? He said, well, your problem is sobriety. Why you relapse is sobriety. You don't know how to live sober. And that was another piece of truth that I got. And I think that's why I'm still here today. Whether I drink again or not, my life will never be the same. No matter what happens in my life, it'll never be the same after that question. And then he handed me the book back, and I had a little bit of loneliness. He started reading me the doctor's opinion, and I couldn't even concentrate. And I closed my book, and I just sat there like an old 5-year-old. And he said, Rick, do me a favor. Before I leave, I'm leaving, because you don't seem to be serious about this. He said, go upstairs in that bathroom, and you ask her, look in that mirror, and you ask yourself if you're okay. And if you can ask yourself that you're okay, then I'll take the 2 big books. I'll go home. And you'll never see me again. And like a 5-year-old, I stomped up the steps. I looked in the mirror, and I looked in the mirror for 1 second before I broke down. I went back downstairs, and I asked that guy for help, and that was my bottom. That was my alcoholic bottom, where I believe everybody's bottom is the same when we ask for help and we actually mean it and we're willing to take some action, followed by action that he has laid out. And that started my journey here. See, my journey here didn't start with step 1. My journey here started with somebody else's step 12. My friend Danny wasn't sent by my home group or any other home group. He wasn't sent by World Service or General Service. He heard another alcoholic was dying, and he came to our 12-step. And that's why I'm here today. My 12-step, my first step started with somebody else's 12-step, and I always be in debt to my friend Danny for that. You know, and he introduced me to men and women who served a higher principle and a higher ethic than themselves. I met men and women who set themselves aside long enough to carry out our primary purpose and actually helped other people. For a long time, I sat in my home group, and some old timer would go up to me and say, Barry the butcher would say to me, "Rick, you never got to feel that way no more." And he'd put a cup of coffee in front of me and say, "You never have to feel that way no more." And he'd walk away. And then someone else would come to me and say, "You never got to feel that way no more." But my friend Danny, what he said to me before he left that house that night, he took me through the first 3 steps. He said, "Rick, you never got to feel like how you feel right now. And I want to show you how not to feel that way ever again when it comes to booze and drugs." And that was the first time anybody ever sacrificed their time for me in a really long time. And he sat with me. He explained the first step to me and explained the second step to me and explained the third step to me. And he showed me how to write a 4th step. You know, in that first step, he asked me a couple questions. He said, "Well, do you know what makes you an alcoholic?" I said, "Yeah, am I thinking?" He's like, "Yeah, that's great, Einstein, but that's not totally it." He said, "What makes you an alcoholic?" I couldn't even tell him. I've been in AA for 6 years. I couldn't tell him what made me an alcoholic. And what makes me an alcoholic is that when I start drinking, I can't stop when I want to. And what makes me an alcoholic is that when I'm stopped, I can't stay stopped in on myself, and alcohol changes my perception of reality. It's that simple. The first step is all inclusive. That's how I look at it. This is how it has to make sense to me, because right now there's a woman in Chatham, New Jersey, who's just as alcoholic as I am, who's going to open a bottle of wine tonight. And her idea is to have 2 glasses, and she's going to polish off that whole bottle, and that's not her plan. And she is just as alcoholic as I am, who had to be stripped of everything and do dirty stuff to get the next drink. Now, she might not suffer no consequences, or there might not be no circumstances. She may never make it to AA. They say most alcoholics never make it to AA. You really think about that, that's pretty insane, right? Because there's help available. I have to know what makes me an alcoholic in order to take this first step. What makes me an alcoholic is different than what makes me powerless. I have to concede to my innermost self what makes me an alcoholic in order to do step 1 on the wall. And step 2 is very simple for me. It's just that I am powerless because I have no God. I never looked at it like that before. It's just how simple it is. And the wording in step 2 is so simple, is why I'm still here. I don't have to believe in anything right now. I had to believe in anything right back then. All I have to do is just be willing to believe that there is a power greater than me. And if anybody got caught in that snowstorm Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, you know exactly there's a power greater than me, is Mother Nature. So that's how simple this was for me. The only problem I ever had with step 3 was steps 1 and 2. The only problem I ever had with step 4 was steps 1, 2, and 3. I didn't understand what I suffered from. I didn't know there was a solution. I didn't know I could make a decision to grant some power to keep me away from that drink. I don't know if anybody else is like me. You're sitting detox. You're sitting in some jail cell, or you're sitting home and you can't get off the couch, and you hate everybody, you hate yourself, and you hate God. I've experienced that so much for 6 years in the rooms of AA. I remember being in detox going, I don't know what just happened, but I hate everybody in my life. I can't stand God, and I hate myself. And isn't that what the 12 steps are designed to do? The first 3 steps is the right relationship with God, because I can't stop drinking on my own, and there's a power to help me to make a decision to get to that power, that I'm going to serve Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to serve AA. That's how I made a decision to turn my life over to the care of God. It's only a decision. I don't know anybody. There are people in my home group who absolutely think they've turned their will over to God. I don't know anybody who's done that. That means that they'd be perfect. They would never get angry, never get resentful, never get afraid. They'd be perfect. They would levitate when they prayed. Right? If you have kids during COVID, you'll find out how unspiritual we really are, right? So how the steps were just, how I look at this is that the first 3 steps, my sponsor knew I didn't want to hear about God. I didn't believe in God, because this is what happened. People in my home group told me to ask God to keep me sober. And I did that. I asked God to keep me sober, but then I drank that night. So God must not care about me. And my current sponsor says, it ain't God's job to keep you sober. You're already sober. Your job is to serve him by serving Alcoholics Anonymous. So the first 3 steps, straighten out my relationship with God. I'm here to serve in whatever capacity I can serve in. And I can't do it perfectly, but I do it to the best of my willingness as God sees fit and moves me to do so. Step 4 is right relationship with myself, which is really no relationship. How selfish and self-centered and how afraid I am. The manifestations of self, which will always get me drunk. Steps 8, 9 is my relationship with you guys. So the first 9 steps, straighten out my relationships. I believe this is all about amends. We go through the first 8 steps to make amends. I think it's a little trick Bill Wilson designed to write a 4th step. We think that's about us to get all that shit out. I think it's really just about amends. How we write a list of people we're angry with. And the flip side is we have to make amends on people that we're angry at. That's a trick. What a spiritual trick that is. Bill Wilson knew exactly what he was doing, divinely inspired. And in that 4th step, I'll tell you, in that 4th step, I saw what kind of human being I was. I don't remember my last load. People say, if I remember your last load, you haven't had it yet. I disagree with that. It's 15 years ago. I'm old. I don't remember how bad it was. I can't stay sober in a memory anyway. But I'll tell you what, I don't ever want to forget what kind of human being I was in that 4th step back then. And I can still be that person today in some areas of my life. And in that 4th step, my sponsor sat with me. He didn't throw me some fancy note, some fancy packet. He got a notebook and tore out 3 pages and gave me a pencil that he sharpened with a razor knife. And he said, give me 10 people that you can't stand. So I didn't know what a resentment was. I know what it means today. But I didn't know what a resentment was. He said, write down 10 people who irritate you. That'll be easy. You better give me 4 pages, because everybody irritated me. And today it's only about 2 people that irritate me. So there's been some progress. Right? So he sat with me, and I saw for the first time what kind of son I'd been. And I saw for the first time what kind of brother I'd been, what kind of coworker, what kind of employee, what kind of cousin, what kind of friend. And it didn't sit right. It just didn't sit right with me. You know, and my 2 biggest resentments were my parents. And if I could have hurt them, I would have. See, there's a part of me back then, you know, if you're like me, there's a part of me that when I get over on somebody, it makes me feel good. And I always thought my parents chipped me. I always thought my parents didn't love me the way they love my brother and my sister, which I know today is a lie. And there was a part of me that when I would need help from my parents and they gave me help, it felt good because I know I was never going to repay them. And it did. And then all of a sudden, that didn't feel good no more. That was removed from me. Like I don't steal from Home Depot when I'm drinking. When I'm sober. But I can steal your peace of mind when I'm sober. So it just switches ships. It just changed the seats on the Titanic. It's still going down. And I saw what kind of human being I was. And it didn't sit right. And Like, how do you make amends to those parents that we crush? Now, all my parents ever did was love me the best they could. And I couldn't see it because I'm so wrapped up in myself. I am overly selfish, overly self-consumed, overly self-absorbed. I've been that way my whole life, and I still can be that way today. But my friend Scott says, he says, you know the people in your life, Rick? You know them shadows that you see? They're people. Because when you're so self-consumed and wrapped up in self, I can't see you, right? And I didn't know I was, and that's how I navigate. That's how I navigate through life. My defects were a faulty defense mechanism to protect me against you guys. And I never grew up. Like, I look like a fully grown adult, but I'm not. I'm childish, I'm grandiose, I'm emotionally immature. I'm driven by the need for excitement. I make my decisions based on fear, and I never could see that. And just seeing it isn't going to be the answer either. Step 4 isn't the answer. You know, I'm aware of it. I become painfully. Step 1 made me painfully aware of my own existence in my own life. Step 4, step 9 made me painfully aware of my existence in your life. You know, for the first 11 years of my recovery, this time around, life went so smooth. You know, for the first 5 months of this recovery, I lived in a recovery house, and I was asked to leave the recovery house, and not because I was doing bad or because I wasn't paying rent or anything like that. My buddy Vic, who owned the recovery house, said, Rick, you got to go because I need your bed. And I moved out of that recovery house at 5 months sober in my own apartment. I got my job back right at the same time. I lost my job through drinking, and through a loophole in the union contract, I got my job back. I didn't even want it back. And I wasn't doing much else, so I took it back, and I've been there ever since. And so I moved to this apartment, and that house I lived in turned into a recovery house. And then it turned into one recovery house, turned into 11 recovery houses. And I ran those recovery houses for 11 years. And this is what my life looked like. I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I take a shower, I lay down, grab a bite to eat, and I'll go to a meeting. I would ride down to the intake house. I'd pile all the guys I could in my car, take them to a meeting, come back to the recovery house, order pizzas for them, and sit around and talk about AA and read the big book with the guys. I did that just about every day for 11 years. And I didn't know what was about to come. Like, I didn't know. The best advice I ever got, it wasn't even directed towards me. I was in my home group and some old guy came in. I mean, I'm old, but this guy was old. He was old. And he came in and he just raised his hand during the meeting and he said, you know, you got to do the work before you need it. Thanks for letting me share. That's all he said. And I was sitting right next to him. And I felt that. And I was only a couple of days sober when he shared that. I never know what it meant until I was 11 years sober. 11 years sober, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I'm not going to make it a pity party or none of that stuff. But, you know, my two biggest fears were getting cancer and having surgery sober. And that fear came true in 30 seconds. And, you know, I was diagnosed with cancer. I went through four major surgeries, and I went through chemotherapy. And I'll tell you what, the fellowship showed up. I was not a big fellowship guy. And people showed up who I know didn't like me. And that's not fancy. I've had people tell me they didn't like me. Because I was a guy that would duct tape 8 big books across my chest, slide into a meeting and blow the meeting up, telling everybody that they ain't doing it right. I was like the 8 big book suicide bomber. Now, and I wasn't very well liked, and I was diminishing my usefulness in the rooms of AA, judging people. And what I didn't know, I was judging myself without AA. I got diagnosed with cancer, and God used this experience to let me know that the fellowship is pretty cool. I have a friend of mine, and from your area, who says the best thing about AA is the fellowship, and the worst thing about AA is the fellowship. And I was not a big fellowship guy. But I'll tell you what, when I got diagnosed with cancer and I couldn't do things for myself, the fellowship showed up. People who told me they didn't like me knocked on my door and gave me ShopRite gift cards. I didn't work for over a year. And I got paid, but not for the first 6 months. Eventually, I got paid for the time I missed, but there was a lot of red tape involved and a lot of uncertainty. And people came to my door and took me to meetings, so I know they didn't like me. We didn't say 2 words to each other while we were in the car. When I go to a meeting, I'm like, yeah. I get in the car, I'd be like, silence. And that changed my whole view about the fellowship. And it's okay to let our friends put us back together again. I was the kind of guy that I would go to a meeting. The first 6 years in AA, prior to my last relapse, I would go to a meeting and I would sit in the back and I would just judge everybody. And I would sit there and I would leave as soon as the prayer was over. I would never let anybody get close to me. Because like I said earlier, if you knew about me what I know about me, then you're going to feel the same way about me that I feel about me. I always felt less than. I always felt like I was coming from behind. I'm not lovable. No one likes me. And I couldn't open up to anybody. And step one was that conversation starter. Step one with my sponsor allowed me to open up enough about me so I could do a fifth step with him. And I started to form a bond with one person. I had no friends. I was talking to a kid on the phone today, and I so related to him. He's about a month sober. No, he had a month sober and relapsed. He has 3 days sober today. And he says his phone never rings. Right? I remember for the first 2 months of my sobriety, I had 2 contacts, 2 phone contacts, and my phone never rang. And I was so afraid of people, even at 2 months sober. I'd be outside my home group. There would be 50 people hanging outside smoking. I'd pretend I'm on my phone trying to talk to anybody. I had nobody to call but my sponsor, my buddy Vic. I had 2 phone numbers for about a month and a half. And I relate to that. I couldn't open up, and I still have a tough time connecting with people. To sit here and tell you that I feel connected all the time would be a lie. I suffer from alcoholism, not any worse than anybody else, but I suffer from alcoholism for myself at a rock bottom level, where my defects just block me off from everybody, and my head wants to isolate. And when I isolate, this is how I look at it. My head wants me alone. Whenever I get jammed up, I get threatened, or I get fear, I'm afraid of something, or I'm resentful, or my feelings get hurt, I want to go think. Just want to go think. And when I start to think away from you guys, I got 2 sponsors up here. I got Charles Manson and Ron Jeremy. I don't know if anybody knows. I don't know if anybody knows who Ron Jeremy is. We can Google it later. And that's who I got. And it never works out because my mind. I suffer from alcoholism, which means my own mind's against me. It's not everybody's mind's against them. I'm just giving you my experience. When I woke up this morning, my reminder came on that I had to speak tonight. And immediately my head went to, I don't like speaking at live meetings, let alone speaking on Zoom, where I have absolutely no human connection. This is why this is so difficult for me. And I didn't wake up this morning going, Anthony and his home group is going to love me. Anthony loves me so much, and people love me so much. I just love everybody. That's not my experience when I woke up this morning. It's not my experience when I wake up any morning. But I have a way out of that. I can sit quietly like I did this morning, and I can read a book, whether it's the big book, The Power Now, Anthony DeMello, Eckhart Tolle, whatever I read in the morning, whatever book I grab, I have a cup of coffee, and I sit quietly, and I follow my breath, and I can start my day. Sometimes it takes me 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes me 20 minutes. I don't know. But I know when I'm ready to start my day. So so how I look at it is the alcohol is like a parasite. If my cat gets a parasite, tapeworm or ringworm, it wants to eat the cat from the inside out. And it wants it dead. And alcohol is like a parasite for me. Because the first drink comes from the inside out, not from the outside in. My defects come from the inside out, not from the outside in. Trouble with personal relationships looks like it happens out here, but it starts from the inside out, based on my spiritual condition. So the parasite called alcoholism wants me to drink again. And that's what alcoholism is. When people, I had friends of mine that relapsed, so I thought they would never drink again. And it doesn't let up. I know, and I've talked to guys with 45 and 50 years of sobriety. I don't know a whole lot. I've experienced a whole lot, but I don't know a whole lot. But the things that I do know is I do need to know some things to bring to the table with a new guy. I know that wanting to be sober will never keep me sober. I know that I'm not going to get so spiritual that my head won't lie to me. I know I'm never going to get so sober that I can't drink again, but I can get so drunk I can't make it back. I also know that I'm never going to outgrow my humanness. And I've made every mistake I can make in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And me not picking up is not one of them, because I have no say-so in that. And I believe why I haven't picked up is because of step 11. Grace got me here, but conscious contact has kept me here. It just proves to show you a guy like myself who suffers from defects and a head, Jesus Christ, text message, and a head that just puts the screws to me on any given day. Can stay sober or can have the obsession removed. But I know what gets removed can be returned. I've watched my friends with 25 and 30 years sober relapse because they got complacent. I think I know that consistent and persistent action here is what's needed for a guy like me to stay here for a period of time. That's the only thing I've done right is show up to my home group week in and week out. I didn't miss my home group meeting for over a decade. I missed it I think I missed it 4 times in 10 years. And that's not, I'm not keeping score. My sponsees have. And I missed it when I was diagnosed with cancer. I missed it when I was at a convention. And I missed it when I was on vacation. And I've missed it since. But from 2009 to 2019, I don't think I only missed it a couple times. And that's just what happened. That was not my plan. But what happened is I like going to meetings. I love my home group that much. I don't want to miss it. I think the home group is so important in service to a home group. Is how else am I going to serve God? I could join a church group. I've done that. I've painted church basements for free. I've done a lot of stuff for my community in my own neighborhood. But there's a difference. There's a difference when I help a little old lady carry her bags from ShopRite. Then I sit down with a new guy and listen to that fifth step. There's a big difference in connectiveness. I was at a meeting this morning, and I'll be at a meeting Monday night. Both were. The meeting this morning was in a church, and the meeting Monday night is going to be in a church. And you know who's there? AA, talking about God. So I think God had a plan with us. I truly believe that He made us we uniquely and divinely created to help another alcoholic. That's why it's hard for people who aren't alcoholics to help another alcoholic. That's just my experience. I had counselors who tried to help me. I've seen therapists who weren't an alcoholic, and I couldn't connect. Because think about it. If you drive down any bad neighborhood in any city that you go to, you drive down Kensington Avenue in Philly, and you'll notice 3 things. You'll notice bars on every corner. You'll notice drug dealers on every corner. And you'll also notice churches. And why is that? I think because all 3 work. All three work, right? I'm not talking about necessarily church working, but the spirituality is. And, you know, this morning, the AA people were talking about God. We were only agnostics. The big book study, we were only agnostics. And there was nobody upstairs in the congregation talking about God. So I truly believe, this is how I look at it. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know. That God knew exactly what was going to happen. God knew exactly what was going to happen. That Catholic churches in my neighborhood are non-existent. Catholic schools are not existent in my neighborhood anymore. The churches are open, but the Catholic schools aren't. Some of those churches are closed. God knew exactly what he was doing when he made us. We're going to keep on carrying the message about God, about the power of God. And like I was talking about earlier, how do you make amends to those parents? At 11 years sober, I was diagnosed with cancer, and at 12 years sober, my father had a stroke. And I haven't had a relationship with my parents. You know, I would go over to their house and visit. I wouldn't stay long. They had a restraining order against me. And so it was kind of hard to stay there. You know, I didn't know if my mom was going to call the cops on me or not at the time. And over the years, I got lifted. But our relationship suffered. And that was because of me. And at 12 years sober, I think end of my 11th year, my father had a stroke. And my mom came to me and asked me to move back in with him. And my first reaction was absolutely not. What are you talking about? Move back home? But you guys, I got my own apartment. I got a cat. I'm doing good. I can see my home roof. I can see my home roof from my bedroom window. It takes me about a minute to walk there, but I usually drive because I'm lazy. And I thought about it. I called my sponsor and he said, you know what you got to do. So I called up a new guy I was working with. Maybe he would give me a different answer. And he said, Rick, you know what you got to do? You got to move in with your parents. You got to take care of your parents. And so I did. And this is where step 6 and 7, and this is where the level of my own self-centered and self-seeking and selfish behaviors, and it nauseates me today when I think about it. I moved back in with my parents, but I didn't like it. And I'm properly ashamed of myself for the first 2 years I lived here, for the first 3 years I lived here with them. I looked like a good son, but I really wasn't. I did what I had to do, but my internal condition was so resistant to everything. I was very resentful of my brother and my sister for not helping me much. I don't know how to take care of nobody. Cat's easy. You feed it, you clean the kitty litter out once in a while. Cats are easy to take care of, but another human being, I didn't know how to do that. And the people and the fellowship, my friends in AA, the women and the men showed me how to do that. Because I remember, like, I'd take the trash out and be so resentful taking the trash out. Like, taking it, the pouring rain, right? Like, I remember my internal condition just in a knot. But there's something that happens here in the human heart. Over a period of time, something started to shift. That me being here to do the right thing transcended into something that I wanted to do. I fell in love with my mom all over again. I'm a guy who has no capacity to love, and I'm too selfish to serve. And step 12 taught me a little bit about love. And my home group taught me a little bit about service, enough to keep me here. I recognize I have so much more to grow. And I remember I was doing the dishes, and my sponsor called. I'm doing the dishes for my parents. And this is right when the shift started. He called and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing the dishes, man. I just fed my parents. I'm doing the dishes." My mom and dad were 95 and 93, 94. And I said, "I just fed them. I'm doing the dishes." He said, "Oh, you look like a good son. You're such a good son." He said, "How's your insides doing?" I said, "Not good. I'm full of angst." He said, yeah, you're a real good son. And he hung up. And I got what he was saying. And the next day I asked God to show me. I asked God to show me how to take care of them with love. And it started to shift. And I remember being resentful. I go on Facebook. I see my friends down the shore on the boardwalk. Wow. And all a big group of my friends. And it's Saturday night. I'm struggling to get my mom out of the bathtub. And my dad's in the bed crying for me to help him put his pajamas on. And I'm going, what is my life? Like, this is what my life's turned into. And I'll tell you what, that shift happened, and it was a pleasure doing that. Me and like I said, I fell in love with my mom. My mom passed in August of 2019. And my dad just passed last August. My mom died in September of 2019. My dad died last August. And me and my dad became best friends. He was my buddy. He was never my buddy growing up. He was disciplinarian. He was the great provider. Never taught me about love or how to behave. He was never home. He just provided and was good with money. And living here when money didn't matter anymore, we bonded. And I'll tell you what, I pushed put curlers in my mom's hair and pierce her ears. And every Thursday we paint nails, and Friday we do nails all over again. And I wouldn't give it up for the world. And I'll tell you what, that happens in the human heart. For a guy like me, it don't sound much to most people, but for a guy like me who struggles with all that, that's a big deal. My heart softened. And it's the experience that I needed to carry on. My job's done here. I'll be out of this house soon. My brother's buying this house. He's throwing me out. Not really throwing me out, but he's throwing me out. And I'm looking. Today I spent my day looking for houses. What a gift that is. So how do you make amends to those parents that we steamroll? I had the opportunity to make amends, to be a son. You guys gave me my parents back. You guys gave my parents their son back. And I'll always be grateful for AA and what AA's done for me. I didn't do anything but drink to get this. I don't do anything special here to stay sober or to get sober. I just had this conscious contact with God. And step 12 is why I'm still here. It ain't about the material things that I get or anything like that. It's about watching that new guy who you never think will stay sober. I know every one of us in this room know that person. You meet somebody, you're like, he's never going to stay sober. He'll never get a job. He'll never get a year sober. And next thing you know, they get a year sober. Next thing you know, they get a job. Next thing you know, they're sober 3 years. Next thing you know, they get married, have babies, and you're watching. And that's why I'm still here. That's the gift. My sponsor said, Rick, I'm not here to make your life better. You're here to make somebody else's life better. And if you make somebody else's life better, watch what happens to your life. He also said to me, I'm not here to love you. I'm not here to love you until you love yourself. He said, loving you has been your problem your whole life. I'm going to love you until you can love somebody else. And that started with the guys. I'm not sure about boy-girl love. That's going to be a work in progress. That's the straw that stirs my sober drink. That's where my parasite lies. That's my issue. I have a great AA life. I have a great work life. I have a great family life. It's my relationships is that I'm inexperienced with. And I'm learning how to do that. And, there's a friend of mine always says, trust God and do good. I'm just trying to trust God, not be mean. And it's a tough deal for a guy like me. Because my head just feeds me. And every thought that comes through in my head, I used to believe it. I don't believe every thought anymore. That just happened. So AA's been, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Even for me to say that is a miracle. And for me to say that I miss my parents. And if I can give one more, I give my left arm to hold my father and mother again. That's huge. That's what you guys did for me. And I'll always be grateful. Peace, guys. Thanks for letting me share.